Well, Andrew, how many cards does the Prime Minister have here? Because obviously China has tried to tone down the wolf warrior diplomacy. We're out of the era of Scott Morrison. We're out of that contentious period over COVID. We still don't know where that came from, and I guess we'll never know, but whatever. But Andrew, what about, though, the Chinese economic condition right now? How much of that is playing into their need to wind up being a bit more, shall I say, pacific towards countries like Australia?
Yeah. Well, I think we do know where COVID came from, but I'll just put that in the parking lot for the time being. But yeah, China's going through an enormous change. I think that 30 years of openness and investment, and China being the world's factory, to a large degree, that period of its economic development has run its course. And I think that has profound implications for Australia in particular and the rest of the world. Having said that, China still places great importance on a reliable supply of iron ore and also lithium. If you look around our roads, you'll see cars by BYD and Chery popping up all over the place. And China has a glut of product in both electric vehicles and batteries. So the idea that some of the Teal members have said, that we need to do more in this space, I don't think they fully appreciate how dominant China is in this particular area. The earlier EVs are now sitting in kind of EV graveyards. There's such overcapacity. At one point, there were 500 companies in China making electric vehicles. Now there's about 100, and that'll be further consolidated. But they're overproducing, and so they're selling them at discounts around the world. And China is now the world's #1 manufacturer of automobiles. And it's kind of leapfrogged the rest of the world, in fact, on EVs, while they've been asleep at the wheel, pun intended.
James McPherson.
Andrew, I just wanted to ask you about the G20. The Prime Minister's just been there. Interestingly, Xi Jinping was not there. The first time since 1999, I think, that a Chinese president has not been present. Why was he not there? And second, whilst Albanese spoke very strongly against Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the G20 didn't condemn it. They simply urged a peaceful resolution. How is it that Albanese can be so out of step with the statement ultimately issued?
Well, your second question, I'll deal with your second question first, James. India has very much had a non-aligned movement mentality, and it's growing at 7%. It's going to become more powerful over time, and it's reluctant to be involved in alliances, although the Quad, which is relatively informal and still forming, might be an exception to that because China and India are rivals. They've had skirmishes on their border in the Himalayas. The Indians are they have a very robust democratic media, and they've been, if you ever see Why on News, for example, they're very critical of China. In terms of China's social media apps, WeChat, etc., TikTok, they just banned them outright. No mucking around in India, very robust. But I think another reason that Xi is not going there is that he sees himself now as kind of the leader of the global south and presenting an alternative model of governance. And of course, the massive debt in China has thrown questions around, whether the Chinese model is in fact superior. But it's partially a snub to India and not wanting to confront Modi, although they were both at the BRICS meeting in South Africa recently. And it's partly a snub to the US. The US has been sending people like Commerce Secretary Raimondo, Janet Yellen, for example, recently, and haven't been getting much traction at all. So I think they're the reasons that he's sort of sitting this out, and he's sending his deputy, the new Prime Minister Li Qiang, in his place.